As the Money Burns is an original podcast by Nikki Woodard. Based on historical research, this is a deep exploration into what happened to a set of actual heirs and heiresses to some of America's most famous fortunes when the Great Depression hits. Each episode has 3 primary sections. Section 1 is a narrative story. Section 2 goes deeper into the historical facts. Section 3 focuses on contemporary, emotional, and personal connections. Story recap. While teenager Barbara Hutton obsessively works to reunite former lovers, Doris Duke finds herself the focus of an older man, Jimmy Cromwell. Another teen heir, Jakey Astor, continually crosses everyone's path. Now back to As the Money Burns. The Iceberg Cometh. A family fortune isn't always family friendly. Sibling rivalry can reach great heights when money is divided unequally, especially after one infamous maritime tragedy changed the course of a dynasty. Section 1. Story. At the Newport Cottage, Beechwood, the proud young teen heir, Jakey Astor, sits at the morning breakfast table with his kind and proper sister-in-law, Helen. She's regal in her own way. They are waiting for Vincent, his older brother, her husband, and now patriarch to the Astor family in America. They have been waiting for a long time. Finally growing impatient, Jakey dives into his meal. He hates always waiting for Vincent. Helen's own hunger eventually causes her to relentlessly nibble. Jakey hurries up and leaves to join up with his friends. Later in the morning, a maid goes about cleaning the rooms. She freezes when she comes to the master's suite. She glances around, then takes a deep breath and goes in. A scream comes out of the room. On the bed sits a half-dressed, all 6 foot 4 inches, in his 40s, Vincent staring down at the ground. In comes the butler who shoos the shocked maid out. Vincent inquires about his valet, and the butler, confused, asks another servant to check on him. Vincent mumbles he doesn't want to be a bother, but ran into trouble when putting on his shoes. The butler picks up the shoes, removing the inserts, and helps Vincent finish getting dressed, adding a favorite gold pocket watch to the sailing attire. The servant returns to inform them that the valet is very sick and that a doctor has been called. Strolling around on the docks, teen heiresses, the budding fashionista Barbara Hutton, and tall, awkward Doris Duke are catching up. Doris relays her confusion about the situation with older man Jimmy Cromwell, whose sexual attentions went a bit further than the inexperienced youth could reciprocate. Doris clams up and freezes when she looks ahead. Jakey hangs with a group of male teen heirs before the annual regatta begins. It's one of the quintessential Newport activities. Tiny raindrops barely appear from the sky. They come across the Nourmahal, Vincent's brand new yacht built in 1928. The guys egg Jakey on a dare to board the ship. The yacht might be Astor property, but Vincent is very territorial over his toys. Irritated and proud, Jakey walks up the plank and struts on the deck like it's his alone. Barbara nudges Doris to keep walking, but she's too afraid everyone will laugh at her again. The increasing rain further traumatizes Doris, as they are also without an umbrella. Before anyone can really take notice of them, the captain steps out, greets Jakey, and waves. Everyone then notices Vincent's arrival. The drops of rain quickly change into a downpour. The teen males scramble away as Barbara and Doris struggle to find cover. Clumsily, Doris and Vincent bump into each other in front of the plank. Vincent insists the girls board the yacht until the rain subsides. The lavish Nourmahal isn't just any yacht. It's one of the finest modernized ships of its era. They sit in one of the lounging areas. Barbara, Doris, Vincent, and Jakey. The air is filled with tension and deafening silence. The yacht shifts from time to time. Though at port, it's still part of the sea. But the storm outside is no match for the internal storms inside. As they rock about, Vincent fidgets with his gold pocket watch. Its gleam occasionally hits Jakey's eyes, who deep down seethes with rage at his brother. The silence is mostly caused by their mutual dislike. Vincent has no idea how to talk with teen girls. He has always been socially awkward, much like Doris. They actually have much in common, being 2 of the wealthiest heirs of their individual generations. Doris has the reverse setup in her family with an older half-brother, Walker. Both heirs lack the grace and sophistication their domineering mothers demand. From his seat, Jakey glances from one to the other. He envies Barbara's only child status, admires Doris's strength of will despite her other flaws. And while as for Vincent, every time he flicks that watch, Jakey considers justifiable homicide. Jakey's stomach churns. When he goes to excuse himself, a hard jolt rocks the boat and throws him to the floor. The lights go out. Flashback April 14th to 15th, 1912. Under the darkness of night and in cold, bitter air, chaos reigns as the ship Titanic tilts and creaks, sinking into the water. Dashing in his life jacket, Colonel John Jacob Astor IV, or Jack, late 40s, guides his pregnant young bride, Madaleine, only 18, to the lifeboats. As Jack assists his wife, the steward warns, "Women and children first." Truly concerned, Astor pleads, "May I please accompany my wife? She's with child and I can help row." The steward firmly states, "Sir, women and children only." "Jack, don't leave me." Madaleine clings to her husband, their passionate love for each other apparent. He tenderly puts her in the boat. In a soothing voice, he coos, strokes her head, and kisses her gently. "Don't worry, my love. This is probably a cautionary step. I'll catch another boat." She rubs her belly at the wonderful thought. However, the panic around them is real and a nightmare. The boat is partially full. The stewards lowered it into the water. Jack turns around and helps other women into the final boat. Then he checks his gold pocket watch and drifts from the sight into the chaos. In the dark distance, Madaleine with the other ladies and children watch as the lights flicker aboard the sinking ship. A week later in daylight, a crew fishes the dead out of the water, including a well-dressed man with a gold pocket watch. Back in Newport, the lights flicker back on board the Nourmahal. The jolt flung the pocket watch over towards Jakey. He picks up his father's gold watch, touching it quite possibly for the very first time. So many feelings overtake him. Then he sees Vincent glaring at him. Barbara and Doris don't understand what is happening. Jakey hands back over the watch and excuses himself. Section 2, History and Historiography. When the Titanic struck an iceberg, a whole generation and those thereafter learned the vulnerability of thinking one could be invulnerable. The Titanic was a modern marvel that many excitedly anticipated its maiden voyage. Had that voyage not turned into a maritime tragedy, it would likely receive far less attention today. James Cameron's 1997 film Titanic was the largest grossing film for 12 years. And yet much of that film's success, with all its technical genius, is attributed at its core being a love story. Ironically, within the film, another true love story was hinted at but never fully explained, that of the richest man aboard, John Jacob Astor IV, and his pregnant young wife, Madaleine. In the film, Kate Winslet's character Rose mentions to Leonardo DiCaprio's Jack about the scandalous love affair in high society. John Jacob Astor IV was portrayed by Eric Braeden, the ultimate leading male soap star, Victor Newman, of The Young and the Restless, my grandmother's favorite daytime soap. Here's the real story behind the love, scandal, and tragedy, and how it impacted all of Astor's children. As previously mentioned, the Astor fortune was established by America's first millionaire businessman, German immigrant, John Jacob Astor, a fur trader who ended up owning a large portion of New York City's most prized real estate. He established a strong pattern of passing the bulk of the fortune, sometimes skipping generations, to one chosen male heir, with all other children getting a substantially smaller pittance in comparison. Thus, the Astor fortune would be ensured to continue. By the end of the 19th century, grandson William Astor Jr.'s wife, Caroline, would be the reigning society queen, infamous for the 400 list and a battle of wills against Ava Vanderbilt. Caroline and William had only one son, John Jacob Astor IV, along with 4 daughters. John Jacob Astor IV, a.k.a. Jack or Colonel, was first unhappily married to Ava Lowell Willing. They had 2 children, William Vincent in 1891 and Ava Alice Muriel, a.k.a. Ava, in episode Ford Wonderful Things, in 1902. Thanks to the pioneering efforts of Ava Vanderbilt's divorce, the long-estranged Astor couple agreed to divorce promptly after Caroline's death. They did not want to deal with her disapproval. Jack took custody of son Vincent, while the former Mrs. Astor took their daughter Ava to England, and hence the connection to King Tut's financier, Lord Carnarvon. Back in the United States, Jack seemed to liven up after being free from his dominating ex-wife. Divorce and remarriage had now become socially acceptable, so quite naturally, Jack fell in love and married again in 1911 to Madaleine Talmadge Force. What should have been happy times for the wealthy heir became immediately scandalous. Not only did the marriage occur too quickly within a year after the divorce, Jack was 47 while his bride was 18 years old, 1 year younger than his son Vincent. They married at Beechwood, with Vincent serving as the best man. The uproar in society caused Jack and Madaleine to go for a long trip to Europe and the Mediterranean to wait for the heat to die down. While seeing the pyramids of Egypt and other sites, Madaleine became pregnant. The couple decided to return before the birth to the United States aboard the Titanic. An inventor, avid sailor, and technically curious, Jack was thrilled to be part of the maiden voyage of the modern marvel. As now known, they were separated at the lifeboats due to the restrictions against men. Nobly, he would assist others as the ship went down, the richest man to die in the tragedy. Upon hearing of the disaster, Vincent did not immediately panic, but stayed camp at the White Star Line offices waiting to hear the list confirming survivors. The next morning, the first news was only the number who survived. Vincent's attitude changed to concern as he started to comprehend the magnitude. He left, went home, and ate breakfast, the first food he had consumed in 24 hours, then went to his father's office. He authorized a $10,000 contribution for needy survivors. At 5 p.m., the list of names who survived was announced. His beloved father was not on it. Vincent's only consolation was knowing of his father's final brave acts. The statistics: 705 survivors, 1,517 perished, of which 832 passengers and 685 crew members. 53.4% more could have survived had they used the lifeboat spaces available. By group, survivors were 75% of all women, 52% of all children, 20% of all men. 9 babies were born in the months afterwards. Another 2 died shortly after their birth, and 2 more were stillborn. 2 pregnant women died in the tragedy. Madaleine survived, and 4 months later, on August 14th, gave birth to Jakey, formerly John Jacob Astor VI. The Astor will gave the bulk of the fortune to oldest son Vincent, estimates around 75 to 87 million, nearly 2 billion today, and becoming number 12 on Forbes' very first richest list in 1918. 10 million to daughter Ava Alice, a $5 million trust with lifetime access to all properties to Madaleine unless she remarried, and $3 million to any unknown heir. Had Jack survived, he might have allotted things differently. Vincent was an awkward Harvard student, struggling to get by on a minimum allowance by his father. Vincent had to borrow $40 to buy a motorcycle. Jack was harsh and often unforgiving disciplinarian. Now Vincent was one of the richest men, inheriting everything only 7 months later when he turned 21, with no generation-skipping trust, nor a more equitable split with Jakey. Immediately, Vincent quit Harvard, showed up at the estate office, the first time an Astor had been there in 20 years, and started studying the business. Learning quickly the Astor fortune involved a lot of slums, he then set out to rectify. Vincent could be charitable to the poor, but he was stingy with his family, and he had hardly any friends, a distant cousin, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, being one of the few. Vincent and Ava hardly got along with their 11-year age difference, and being reared apart, causing most of the estrangement, but they did try. Vincent's first wife, Helen, was better at the social mingling, but Vincent suffered from mumps back at Harvard, which left him infertile. Helen wanted to formally adopt Jakey as their heir, but Vincent was vehemently against it. In fact, Vincent would claim Jakey was illegitimate and not Jack's real son, indeed implying Madaleine had an affair. Madaleine would marry within 3 years after Jack's death, willingly forfeiting her inheritance for love, but she would fight to have her son included as a proper Astor heir. Both Ava and Ellen will be kind to Jakey, but they have no influence over Vincent on the matter. Born only a few months before Barbara Hutton and Doris Duke, Jakey would forever be conscious of the scandals surrounding his parents and birth. He often suffered digestive issues, which his mother explained to a school nurse. Well, you know his father went down on the Titanic. Many assumed Jakey had inherited the sum equal to Vincent, for which he would not deny. Since Vincent was atrociously bad with society, Jakey portrays himself as the suave rightful heir and hopes one day of winning over his half-brother's approval. The big rub: Vincent is the executor of the minor Jakey's estate, and Jakey will have to wait until he's 21 to have control over his own trust fund. Meanwhile, Vincent has his toys: a luxury yacht, multiple vehicles, several estates. Jakey will have to bide his time going to prep school at St. George's in Newport, then to Harvard. Vincent inherited everything, including that prize pocket watch that was discovered on Jack's body. Much to Vincent's vexation, Jakey got to be the namesake. Speaking of names, Jakey was one reference for the heir. He was also referred to as Jack Astor, in U.S. press, John Jacob Astor III, though completely incorrect. His father was the fourth, and a British cousin, the fifth, who also went by Jakey. And the moniker, Titanic Baby. Oh, he definitely hated that one. I'm going with Jakey due to youth and more unique for this set. His sister, Ava Astor, was popularly known as Alice, and Vincent and Alice's mother went formally by Ava. But the mother Ava has little mention in our primary story, and the name Alice competes with the Mrs. Alice Vanderbilt and a few other similar namesakes. Thus, I will use Ava primarily for the sister. The first John Jacob Astor left behind as a legacy many institutions, including the Astoria Library in Manhattan's East Village, which now serves as the New York Public Library. Another avid builder, John Jacob Astor IV, contributed both St. Regis and Knickerbocker hotels in New York City. Vincent, too, will make his own contributions, but that's getting ahead of ourselves in this story. Section 3, Contemporary and Personal Relevance. Part of what fascinates me in all these intertwined stories is the various familial relationships, especially with siblings, and all their complexities. I sort of get the issues over large sums of monies and fractured relationships, and yet the situation still breaks my heart. The rub comes from the dynamics between all the siblings. I'm the youngest of 4, with the 2 oldest 10 and 11 years older and half-siblings. We all share a biological mother. The brother I lost was my full-blooded sibling, and I can't imagine how I survived without having my other brother and sister. To this day, I'm grateful for them both. Now, as my sister and I have discussed, it's different when you grow up in the same house as we did. The half description merely explains a few basic technicalities, as in not looking alike. My family's overall motto: our kids are welcomed into the family no matter what. They didn't get a say in the situation, and that's for stepkids. So halves? Well, they're actual blood. And trust me, there are so many divorces, remarriages, and whatnot in my family. There are a lot of kids we're going to claim for life. A lot. Even if the marriages go, we keep the kids. I've seen money come and go, and it can help situations, certainly. But for many of the troubles I've gone and seen through life, I value most the relationships that have helped me through them. The iceberg that hit the Titanic was a big event that made news around the world and still lingers on today. However, a bigger iceberg, the Great Depression, is coming in our story that will have a far greater impact that changes the world forever. And now, once again, we are in the midst of another iceberg ripping across all threads in society. The most precious things at stake are those we love. Next, when we return to As the Money Burns, music soothes the soul and can cross racial lines. When a supreme hostess introduces an international guest to one local style, a new media sensation is created. Until then, As the Money Burns is an original podcast written, produced, and voiced by Nikki Woodard based on historical research. Archival music has been provided by Past Perfect Vintage Music. Check out their website at www.pastperfect.com. Please come visit us at As the Money Burns via Good Pods, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Transcripts, timeline, episode guide, and character bios are available at asthemoneyburns.com.